Bears fans, we have a lot to catch up on. Nick and I have been out for 3 relaxing weeks, but since then, we've had a schedule release, we've had early OTA reports, we've had plenty of Bears Twitter meltdowns, and plenty more in between. So Nick and I will talk through everything on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Us, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, right here with my co-host, Nick Whalen, as we're trying to bring you the best Chicago Bears football content that we possibly can on a week-to-week basis. Though, Nick, it's that week-to-week basis is stretching it. This is the monthly podcast, I guess, for the month of May. Where have we been?
Yeah, so I would guess two things. One is I canceled 1 week because here in Wisconsin we had multiple tornadoes going on, and it's kind of some crazy weather. And I think you said you didn't have power or something down there right
We
now.
actually also just got hit with a small tornado. We lost, I think, in my backyard, one of our branches fell, and then in our front yard, two of our branches snapped off. Thankfully, everything fell away from the house. We're fine, but it did create quite the kerfuffle coming back from Memorial Day weekend for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that weekend, another reason why we've had a delay is I've been pretty busy. I got married this last weekend.
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
Congratulations,
thanks, man.
Nick.
Thanks. Yeah. So that took, a lot of planning. And we actually had a party the day before, which took a lot of planning and whatnot and catering and, what you're wearing and tents and,
All the
invites and all
to-do,
that kind of
right?
stuff.
All the to-do.
So much stuff to do. So thanks for hanging with us, guys. There's, what's going on? Some big things happening. So now we're back to Bears, content. One thing we didn't cover, Robert, that I found really fun was that 1920 football drive video with, it took you through the draft.
It was awesome.
And my favorite, so I had two, we don't have to talk about the whole video, but I had two favorite things. So one was when it walked through kind of Caleb and Rome going through the facility. Okay. And this is a very short thing. So people missed it. It's something like I like these little details. They're going through and they're talking to people and they're excited. And there's a scene where Caleb and Rome meet Jaquan Brisker and I can't remember the other guy. And, they're like, oh, hey, what's up? And Caleb says this. He's like, now let's go win championships. And it wasn't for the cameras. It was just like with the guys. And I'm just like, I love that that's how he's wired. It's not like, look at me or let's get this, these stats, whatever. He's like, let's go win championships. Like, that's how I want my quarterback to be wired.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it's funny, right? Let me speak for the Bears fan, Nick, that's thinking the first thought that came to my head, right? Which was we had this humble workman quarterback that came in from North Carolina, and he was going to prove everybody wrong, and things didn't work out. And then we got this blue blood quarterback, came in from Ohio State, one of the best athletes that I've ever seen at the position. And I think there are some amazing athletes at the quarterback position. I also consider myself a realistic person. Justin Fields is in that category of, I mean, for crying out loud, Nick, we're talking about somebody that just darn near set the rushing record, and he even missed games that year, but he didn't work out. There are pieces to what we're hearing about Caleb where, Bears fan, if you're out there, frankly, almost annoyed that you're hearing practice reports, not that you would know why. Does this make any sense, Nick? Like, there's almost a here we go again. Yeah, it's going to feel that way. We all got to take a collective deep breath. We got another thing we got to take a deep breath on that Nick, you and I will get to later in the show. But it's going to be till September until they win a game. I mean, we got to wait for a while.
Well, here's... I kind of I have a plea with this, Robert, kind of.
Give it to me.
Because, like, we have the doomsday, like, oh, it's going to not work out, or this one's going to be a bust too. Look just north of Chicago, right? Green Bay, they have the mindset of it's always going to work out because this is how it's been. Like, we could be positive about this stuff too, or optimistic. Like, that's also an option here, y'all.
Not to mention, Nick, I mean, everybody laughs and giggles when J.J. McCarthy misses a pass during one shot from a warm-up session. And then dude, that harkens me back to days where I remember Jordan Love looked terrible. And then we get to the season and he and his receivers disconnected until they didn't disconnect. And then he
Mhm.
ends up throwing for just over 4,000 yards. And I'm not trying to tell you, Nick, that you have to, I don't know, knuckle under and pretend like Jordan Love's more than we saw last year. But I think that we've got enough evidence to show that training camp reports. All right. So in the world of statistics, we would ask, do they trend towards anything? Right. And the answer that I've seen so far over my years in the league is if you have glowing reports about you, like really, really glowing, that may mean something. Like how Darnell Mooney was asserting himself as a starter, or Braxton Jones was starting at left tackle
Mhm.
well ahead of schedule. That may mean something. But outside of that, dude, especially when it comes to quarterbacks, it sure seems to me like how well you did versus how badly you did doesn't mean much because there are the Joe Burrow type, 2020? No, it was the 2021 Cincinnati Bengals offense that reportedly looked awful throughout OTAs, throughout training camp. They go on to compete for a Super Bowl. Then you get plenty of these other offenses where Aaron Rodgers and the Jets look amazing all throughout training camp, but you trade Aaron Rodgers for Zach Wilson and the wheels don't just fall off. I mean, dude, the whole bus breaks down. I can't help but think, Nick, that excuses be darned. Look, there's a lot to this. But at the end of the day, the way people are going to measure the Chicago Bears' success with Caleb Williams at quarterback is whether he wins games and whether he looks good in the process. And none of that's going to happen for months. So agonizing, if I can thread in the topic I'm thinking of, agonizing over a training camp performance that, Nick, every single player that got on the mic without needing to be asked immediately said, seriously, do not worry about this. The offense was killing us 2 days ago. You guys just saw the day where we got the better of them. I mean, Kevin Byard did not have to jump at defense of his rookie quarterback. So I'm right there with you to tie all the way back to where you were going. Caleb Williams seems like a pretty serious person. I really like his attitude. I resonate with a lot of the ways that he's approaching the game. But even I, as somebody who likes him, we got to see them win games eventually. Over the next 3 years, we're looking for them to hit certain marks that will be fluid as we go. But we all know that. And nobody
Mhm.
really wants the cold take right now, do they, Nick?
Right,
Everybody
no,
wants to get hot
no.
about it.
So, okay, so let's dive back. There's one other thing that I took from the video, and if you have anything else, then we can jump to our next topic. But the one thing that I saw, besides them squirming about whether Rome Odunze would fall to 9 or not, and even I made a joke of Ryan Poles' face when, Penix was taken by Atlanta, is a small little sentence by Ian Cunningham that I can't believe we got our top 2 prospects at 1 and 9. That's how high they had Rome. It wasn't, well, he's one of our top 2 wide receivers, one of our top 2 prospects. Like, they loved Rome. And I get it. They haven't been great at receiver or evaluating or whatever. But again, we have to lean in and trust them because they have rebuilt this roster a ton. If they both loved Rome, I think we should love him a little more than we probably already do.
I mean, it's so funny when we're talking about Odunze, right? I mean, Nick, am I allowed to say that Marvin Harrison has been everything that everybody told me Caleb Williams was going to be in terms of an off-field problem? Am I allowed to say that? I
It's
mean,
been interesting.
we,
It's been
he
interesting.
didn't work out. He's done next to no media availability. He's now in a kerfuffle about his name, image, and likeness. And while I'm sure he'll be fine, I'm not worried about him either, Nick. Then Malik Neighbors is over here immediately sounding like he doesn't want to be a New York Giant. I mean, if you told me that the Bears looked at good guy Roma Dunze, who's a demon on the field and a sweet baby angel off of it, versus the other two receivers that are, let's say, more your modern receiver in
Yeah.
terms of their attitude, and that his character won the Bears over, maybe more so than the on the field stuff, look, I get it. And I'm right there
Mhm.
with you, where I'm not about to say that that's the greatest evaluation ever, but it totally jives with what the Bears have looked
Mhm.
for in dudes as far as their draft prospects go. And I'm not surprised. I'm glad they didn't trade up for him. Because if they did trade up for Rome to 5 or something like that, and then they got Rome Odunze, I feel like I would have been swallowing, like it would have been exciting, but I would have had to swallow that they paid something for it
Yeah.
Instead, we get to live in this awesome world where they made two no-brainer selections. And honestly, Nick, I feel like no-brainer selections are hard to come by, right?
Yeah.
Everybody acts like there's always one. There's not always
And
one.
and I actually, read Dane Brugler's The Athletic recent article, and it was revisiting his top 50 from last summer. So, like, seeing, like, how
Right.
he did and, where they finally ranked, whatever. He had Rome late, and he said, "I had him low on my board because he wasn't good in contested situations." And what did he do this last year? He dominated that.
Mhm.
And there's something to a player realizing a weakness and attacking it and making it a strength. And when I also pair that with he had a broken rib and played through it the whole year and led the whole college football in receiving yards. To me, it's just like there's some resiliency and grit there that I really like about him. And he's not afraid of the competition with the other two
No.
receivers. He embraces it. He's like, yeah, let's go. Like, let's see, watch him guard us. Like, let's go and accomplish a lot, which is also the mindset I want, not the selfish mindset, the team mindset.
I want to put this on a podcast now, Nick, so that when we get to training camp in September, I can revisit it and point to, yes, I said this at the time, right? But
Should I write it down, Robert? Is that
when
one of those
when
things?
I'm watching Washington's film, I swear between 0 and 15 yards, Rome flashes a burst that it's as if he's almost scared to flash deeper down the field. I don't know what's going on in Washington's offense, but I know a lot of receivers that I've watched when they're working with weaker armed quarterbacks basically stop running once they get about 20 yards
Yeah.
downfield because
Yeah.
there's no way the quarterback could possibly pump the ball to that region. In the NFL, that's not how this works. It's expected that, I mean, you have said what you have said about Caleb Williams' arm strength, and the
Mhm.
irony is for all the people that do want to say like Caleb Williams has a top 5 arm strength arm in football or something like that, the range in the NFL is like 15 yards longer on average when it comes to starting quarterbacks than you're going to see in college ball. It's
Yep.
insane how much further the Geno Smith types are expected to push the ball downfield. And it just makes me wonder, Nick, if we have like as I'm watching Rome's college film, do you feel this way? Part of me wonders if the college game held him back a little bit. Now,
Yes.
he caught enough yards that if this is true at the NFL level, you won't see his production step back. You'll see his production equate to what it looked like in college, which would be amazing enough, right?
Mm.
But I can't help looking and seeing a college game that is begging for players to play like Malik Neighbors. And then you look at a pro game that is more about tight spaces, creating small windows, and things that match up with what Rome does naturally do well. And if you feel like I do, I don't feel like we saw the 4.4 speed on that Washington tape,
No.
but it wouldn't surprise me if it's in there, that it was more a matter of timing and being where you needed to be downfield as opposed to just running as hard as you can. I don't know. A lot of questions, but mostly good questions that I
Mm.
can't help but sit here and think, are we going to see a different Rome Odunze than I think people are expecting in the NFL? Because if we do, that guy could be a better pro player than he was in college, which is a pretty common story when you look at big dudes. George Pickens was never good at as good at Georgia as he has been in Pittsburgh
Yep.
because physical guys with athletic ability can come to the league and be better than they ever were. Another example for you, Nick. I can't believe I have this many examples. Undrafted free agent Alan Lazard is a better pro than he was an Iowa State receiver. He was a darn good Iowa State receiver, but I don't think people expected a 700 yard a year guy in Green Bay out of a guy like Alan Lazard.
Right.
So I can't help looking at Rome thinking that everybody's talking about separation, like we haven't been down this road with the Sky Moore types, where we talk a lot about separation in May and June and July. And then you get to August, you get to September, you get to
Right.
October. And why they can't beat NFL press? What? The footwork doesn't get them as far as you thought it would?
Yeah.
What? It
When
turns
you
out
put
you.
pads on, it gets physical. The game changes. And the other part of it too is, I mean, Rome's going to learn from two of the best. I mean, especially Keenan, and that's no slight to DJ, but Keenan's been around longer, and Keenan's route running is awesome. Like, it's really set up to be awesome. But I'm going to pivot, Robert, because we're going to make this a shorter podcast, and we got to dive into the schedule. We haven't even done that, man. We've missed out. So, schedule got released.
I'm ready.
The video was fun, you know, but I want to see what predictions that we have here. Um,
I got to warn
so
you, Nick. I'm feeling pretty good.
All right. I mean, mine already written down, so I'm not changing mine. Okay. So, all right. So let's walk through the schedule, y'all. And this is, you know, I feel like me and Robert might do this again before the season starts. So we're subject to
We should.
change, but right now, this is where we're at. So week 1, Robert, it is Chicago opens up home against Tennessee at noon.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts?
So on stream, when the schedule first came out, I went through and I kept it simple, right? I went with favored, I went with toss up, or I went with not favored. You know what I'm saying? Because I
Mhm.
don't love committing to a win or a loss. I'll use week 2 as an example to give you a small sneak peek. Nick, the Bears could easily win that game. Today, we should probably say they're not favored. You might not, but because I have no idea what you're going to do. But today we could probably get away with saying they're not favored, even though that is a true any given Sunday. The
Right.
Titans could beat the Bears. It's not impossible,
Well,
but I
it's ranges of outcomes. Anything can happen.
anything can. But I
But
really like the Bears on
but
that
I'm making a
noon
request,
game.
Robert. I want wins or losses
I
for this.
know. I really like the Bears. I
Okay.
think that the Bears win that game
All
because
right.
as much as I completely understand how dicey it sounds like it is to bet on a rookie quarterback in his first start. In fact, my understanding is that most rookie quarterbacks flat out don't win their first
Mhm.
start. We're talking about a Tennessee offense that is way cooler on paper than they are in practice. We're talking about a bunch of older guys that need a quarterback to deliver for them, and I just don't trust Will Levis enough. Not to
Mm.
mention, I think that the Bears' offense is good enough at wide receiver to basically produce points on behalf of Caleb as opposed to asking Caleb to produce points
Yeah.
for them. And
Yeah.
so I think that one might be a little bit of a slug match from the defensive side, but especially Nick, if the Bears can create 1 to 2 turnovers out of Will Levis, I think they'll walk away with exactly the win that Roger Goodell wants from them. Like
Mhm.
Roger Goodell built this schedule. Can I say this about the schedule as we dig into this? This is such a favorable schedule for the Chicago Bears in
Oh
terms
yeah.
of everything from timing to who they're playing that you would swear it is doctored for Caleb
Well,
fever. Not
okay.
that I
Well,
mind.
yeah. Well, okay. So the first, I mean, so I'll get into Tennessee in a second, but the one thing is you're talking about the overall schedule. The first 10 weeks, Robert, the Bears have the easiest schedule in the NFL.
Yeah.
So I mean, you talk about like trying to set Caleb up to get confidence and get the Bears wins early. They have the easiest schedule, y'all.
Five
So it's gonna
five
happen.
6-4. Dare I say 7-3 if they go that far, and then they hit their
Mhm.
divisional games, dude. Nick, if they were playing, this isn't happening, so I guess I could talk about this. If they were playing the Packers week 2, I bet you'd tell me because I know you hate them and I know how badly you want this. Hey, they could win, they would lose. That's why they're not playing the Packers until week 11. At which
Right.
point, yeah, then they're going to play them at home. It's like dude, you want to talk about procrastinating? Their last game of the schedule is the one in Lambeau. It's like,
Thank
hey,
goodness.
every single week, take all that experience and
Yep.
channel it into one game for us.
So so you're going to win Tennessee, right?
I think win against Tennessee.
Okay. I'm going to win as well. One point that you didn't make, so I'll just make, well, I think we should alternate probably. Um, is the Titans have a new head coach, y'all. So like it's weird because they're a team I feel like that was at Minnesota when Quizzy took over. And it was like, okay, do we completely tear this down or do we try to compete? And they're trying to compete by bringing in these veterans like Tony Pollard as well. It's like they brought in Snead at corner. Partially, I'm like, what are you doing? But I still they're not as talented as Chicago, but they have a new head coach and new coaches. You talked about quarterbacks. New coaches don't do well either, Robert. So I think at home you have to take Chicago. I'll start week 2. Week 2 at the Texans Sunday night football. I think that was built to have a fun game, Caleb versus Stroud. Like you said, I mean, there's ranges of outcomes where anyone can win any game. That's one where I think Houston's favored. I think they're probably a little bit ahead of where Chicago is right now. Remember, they have Daniil Hunter opposite Will Anderson now. I'm going to take Houston to win that game.
If the Bears start their season 2-0 after
Oh,
Sunday Night Football, headed on the road to play an Indianapolis team where, for all we know, I mean, at this point, I think Anthony Richardson has yet to finish an NFL game, right? I mean, not to wish anything on the guy. I know there's plenty that he dealt with last year,
Yeah.
and anything could change. But I mean, Nick, the NFL populace will lose their
Oh, I
minds.
know. I know.
But I think they're 1-1. And
Okay.
if they lose to Tennessee, they might win this game. I really wouldn't be surprised if they are 1-1 and we're not here at 0-2 going
Okay.
into the game against the Colts. But it's my turn, and I do
Yep.
like their odds against the Colts as well. I think the Colts are a team that everybody continues to want to like. It's not just the
Mhm.
Ballard thing. They set their team up in the right kind of way on paper. But to me, I look at this Colts team and I see last year's Bears team, where there are a couple holes across their roster. In particular, I really don't love their wide receiver situation, especially against the Bears DBs in particular. Maybe Anthony Richardson brings the mobile quarterback energy and busts up a Bears defense that does not do super well when the quarterback totes the pill. But also, the Colts defense is in shambles. And the Bears' offensive weaponry is quite something to behold. I know people keep acting like we're not allowed to say that, Nick. This is a very well armed Chicago
Yes.
Bears team. And so
Yes.
all it'll take to flip some of these games is Rome Odunze and DJ Moore run a double post down the field and say Rome pulls the safety, therefore it's DJ and his corner on the backside. You lay the ball out flat and DJ catches the ball, breaks a tackle, runs for a touchdown. Like that's the kind of stuff that can tilt a game, especially one on the road against a team exactly like the Colts. I like the Bears here.
I can't believe you didn't mention the playmaker at punter, man, making a difference yet. But anyways, there's plenty of
There's
games
games for
yet.
that. There's
Yeah,
games for that.
there's plenty of games. Okay, I'll set you up. Um, this is also a Flu's revenge game, right?
It
If we want to
is.
get technical, going back to Indy, I'm gonna take the Colts in this one though.
Go
It's on
for
the
it.
road. I think I'm a little scared of their run game. Because I mean, I know that I like Andrew Billings. We know Edmonds doesn't do well. That's a very, very good O line, y'all. I think it's a top 3 O line in the NFL. And the other thing too is Shane Steichen. They did well and made the playoffs with Gardner Minshew for almost the whole year
Yes, it
last
did.
year. You add in Richardson and some more dynamics. I actually don't mind the receivers. I like Michael Pittman. They got Downs, Alec Pierce. They just added Adonai Mitchell. They have the tallest tight ends basically in the NFL.
Right.
I think their defense is maybe a little bit more suspect, but I have Indianapolis winning that game.
The
So
the only thing I want to say to that
mhm,
is I feel like we've seen this movie before where the offensive coordinator comes to town, becomes a head coach, rocks out, right? But once you get that year's worth of film on how somebody's running their offense, and in Shane's case, it's a ton of wonderful RPO magic, you can come to the table a little more prepared in year two. And the Bears, in particular, have the dudes to take away a lot of the RPOs that are free yards against most teams, but against Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, they're not as free. And I know you know this, Nick, because you and I are very efficiency focused. The moment that RPO goes from basically a free 6 or 7 yards to
yep,
not basically free at all, actually now it's a 70% chance, the efficiency on that play goes way down. And you're
yep,
talking about the kind of thing that if the offense is building on that as their bread and butter, that may not be bread or butter anymore. So
yeah,
it's the defense for me for Chicago that really helps out here.
no,
It's not that I
could be.
hate the Colts weaponry. It's that I think that the way they're trying to win, like Kyler Gordon on Downs, Alec Pierce on Tyreek, Michael Pittman on Jalen Johnson,
Yeah,
like consistently checkboxing the matchup in Chicago's favor, unless the Colts really start to run the ball well, which
that's what I'm afraid of.
they
Yeah,
try to do, but they
I
didn't.
mean it's Jonathan Taylor, man. I mean I think he's I know McCaffrey, but
I'm right there with you
pure
though.
runner. So okay, so I'm next. We
Home
have
time, back at home.
we're home. We have the Rams coming to town. And Sean McVay, and they had a great year last year. I mean, Puka, you got Cup's been banged up, but whatever. I have Chicago winning this game. Basically, how I looked at it, Robert, was they're going to win one of the games against the Colts or the Rams. That's kind
Hmm.
of how I have it. So you could flip it however you want. I'll take the one at home there. The Rams are coming off of playing the 49ers the week before. So if you think of maybe they could be beat up a little bit. So I have Chicago winning that game. I don't know how it's going to turn out, whether it's going to be a blowout or it's going to be close, but I have Chicago winning.
we're in agreement here that the Bears should win one of the Colts and the Rams. You have them losing away, completely normal and defensible. I have them losing at home because I think this Bears defense might get pieced up by good quarterbacking, and Stafford absolutely fits the bill. That guy is balling right now. Now, Nick,
How do
Stafford.
how
Yeah.
does he do against at Chicago though?
I was even going to go further and say
Wow.
Stafford's pretty old. Like, if you told me Stafford is a little roughed up by the time they get to this point, or that oft injured at BYU, Puka Nakua maybe has some kind of nick or knack, then I think that the math on this one changes. But if Stafford and Puka get to this game healthy, which at this point we have to assume, then
Yeah.
I like the Rams' offense, and I think their defense and the way Sean McVay runs his practices are such that if a rookie quarterback had a little bit of slump week coming off of, especially if they beat the Colts,
Right.
and Caleb Williams is riding pretty high on 2-1, I think that it makes a lot of sense for Carolina or for Los Angeles to get this one. Now it's
Yeah.
my turn. How much do you want me to say out loud, or like how much analysis do you need for me to say that the Bears are better than the Carolina Panthers across the board? And if they don't win that game, it'll be a catastrophe.
No, I don't think we need much. I think we're both just gonna put a win there. Okay. I'll let you start with London then. How about that?
Okay. I don't like the Jaguars. I like Trevor Lawrence. And the more that I look at what the Jaguars continue to try to do, the less I like the way they build this team. And
Mhm.
especially given that you've got Jaguar media asking questions about how good is Doug Peterson really, the
Yep.
vibes are bad in
Mhm.
Jacksonville. And as much as I think that Brian Thomas is a helpful receiver, they're going to ask an awful lot of him. And that's where I don't love him as much. Like
Yep.
Brian Thomas in 2 years, Brian Thomas in even 1 year, different player than Brian Thomas by week 6 in London. My
Right.
favorite part about the Rome Odunze choice is that he can be an impact wide receiver 3, and if he's not impactful, you have 2 other wide receivers that you can lean on plus Cole Kmet. In Jacksonville's case, now you've gone back to begging for Christian Kirk to lead your passing game because you know you don't have a running game and you know you don't have much of an offensive line either.
Offensive line's bad.
It's a good series of matchups for Chicago, at least if I'm seeing this correctly.
I I will say this though. They do have Evan Ingram who caught I think almost 100 passes
They've
last
got
year.
some guys that can play.
Yeah. But they don't have an alpha, and Gabe Davis isn't that either. That's like the other one. They got rid of Zay Jones. So, yeah, that it is interesting because I talked about this actually on a podcast last night. I think Trevor Lawrence is an elite. I don't think he's generational. I think he's probably just good. And he's that Kirk Cousins tier. You could even maybe put Matt Stafford type tier where everything has to be perfect around him for it to work out and be really, really successful. But he'll probably just be that above average team to a wild card team about every year. Maybe quarterback 8 to 14 every year. So I have this as a win. Is that what you have it as?
I've got it as a win. The main thing I keep thinking about, look, maybe I'm stuck on one image. Okay, Nick? Maybe I am. I'll admit it. But watching the Chiefs in the playoffs confirmed the suspicions I had about the Bears. And that's that a lot of teams' offenses will look really good against teams that haven't invested enough in DBs. And then you come to Chicago, you play a series of good DBs. Suddenly things don't work. Why
Yeah.
aren't they working? Oh,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the play calling. Oh, it's the offensive line. Nobody's going to point to the fact that if Jacksonville's receivers just get bodied for a week, there's going to be nowhere to put the ball.
Yeah.
And Trevor Lawrence is just not the quarterback like you're talking about. Anthony Richardson is a better bet to tear the Bears defense in half with his legs. Trevor's not going to do it.
Right.
So that could be another game where, okay, we saw this last year. You knew it was rolling when TJ Edwards found an interception because Tremaine Edmonds might find one now and again, but it was when the Bears DBs started suffocating the outside of the field, forcing you to attack the interior. And
Mhm.
that was where these lurking linebackers just fit into more passing lanes than you thought they would. And dude, that's how you got the Cleveland game. That's how you got both of these Lions games. That's how
Yep.
you got the Minnesota game. And
Mhm.
to me, Nick, it will kind of bum me out if the Bears don't have a couple of those against quarterbacks that never saw it coming. And
Yep.
this to me totally reads like it could be one of
What
those games.
And I think that funnel is gonna be better this year because Kyler, and again, hopefully is healthier, doesn't miss the first part of the year, and Kevin Byard is better than Eddie Jackson. So, okay, so we both have a win there. Just to recap right now, y'all. Robert is 4-2,
We're both 4-2.
and I'm 4-2. Got the bye week. So I'll start with this
We
one.
beat the bye.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
goodness.
there you go. Yeah. We did well. Um, at Washington. Now again, Washington, similar to Tennessee, in my opinion, they got a new head coach, but they're got a bunch of veterans. They brought in Austin Eckler. I mean, I don't know why. Like, why not just go young? They decided to bring in some older guys. I think Dan Quinn's a consolation prize. Dan Quinn got exposed in the playoffs, y'all.
I
Playing
was
off.
about to say, dude, like, don't let me cut you off too hard here. I live in Dallas. I've had a lot of people, and I like defense, okay? I mean, I understand, Nick, that you and I are very offense focused people, but
Yeah.
when you really love football, for better and for worse, you have to study defense because if you don't
Oh,
know how the defense works, how do you know anything about offense?
yep.
And
Yep.
every time I looked at a Dan Quinn, I kept seeing these bad game plans that really talented players were making work. Like, Nick, how good do you really have to be to make a defensive line of DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, and the rest of the guys that they've had on that defensive line, plus some of those corners? I understand, like Leighton Vander Esch, and I can't remember who the other linebacker is that they had for a little while. Like, that it's not as if it's literally all stars, but dude, that defense is built. And to get beat like that in some of the games that they had last year, I don't know what about Dan Quinn would have me excited. Let's put it that
I
way.
I'm pretty sure it's a young LSU linebacker is the other one, but I was going to go Sean Lee, but I knew that was incorrect.
It was
All
correct
right,
for a
so
very long time.
I
So
know
you got
Sean Lee
that
was
going for you.
awesome. Sean Lee was awesome, man. All right, so at Washington, new head coach, rookie quarterback. The Bears are a better, more talented team. They went to Washington last year and waxed them. Okay, remember that one? That was when DJ Moore should have had 4 touchdowns, but they said he stepped out, whatever. So he got 3.
He did. I wish
I
he didn't, but he
I
did.
I don't know. I think Chicago wins this one convincingly. This could be a huge game for Caleb. Again, he's back home, DC, y'all. Remember that? Chicago wins this game.
Coming off the bye, Caleb Williams might go 3-0. Like, not to spoil where I'm headed with this, but
Oh,
we could end up where we drop a game that you or me have predicted as a win. But the next 3, I feel really good about. I really don't like Washington, man. Like, if
all
I
right.
was in Washington media, I'd be telling people, just buckle your seatbelt
Right.
because this could be a messy year.
Yep.
I could make this all about Jaden Daniels, which is its own can of worms. But their defensive backs are so bad, and they
Bad.
traded away all their defensive linemen. And now Johnny Newton is getting surgery on his other foot. Jonathan Allen may not be a commander come week 8. And
How's that O line?
bad. Thank you for asking. And so I can't help looking at this
Do you,
team, Nick, and it's a grim reminder that normally drafting number 2 means you look like this
do,
instead of what the Bears look like drafting at number 1. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Do you want me just to put down a W for you for the next 3 then to make this quick?
Yes, because okay, so Arizona would qualify as a toss-up because I like Kyler Murray. I think drafting Marvin Harrison, adding him to a Trey McBride offense is fun, but it's not like they've got the defensive talent to be competitive. They did their best last year, Nick. And even with them doing their best, and even with Kyler, in my opinion, PFF does not agree, playing decent ball, they still lost quite a few convincing ball games
Yeah.
and didn't have
Yeah.
the fangs to threaten Chicago. So I look at the Arizona game and I mean it's a little harder than New England and Washington, but that's not exactly saying much. This is where the Arizona game, Nick, if I was going to surmise everything I'm about to say into a tiny little nutshell, we are at a bit of an impasse where we have a rookie quarterback. We've got a coach that we would like to prove some things. So we keep wanting, as Bears personalities, to ask a bunch of questions and put a bunch of asterisks down and not be confident. But this is the most kitted out Bears offense I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And this is on the same team as a defense that has quite a bit of juice. very poor on the defensive line, but that's what blitzing is for. Play a bunch of man, blitz like a maniac, and go after people.
Yeah, but then Greg Dortch makes a big play, man. That's what's gonna happen.
Whatever. You live with it, right?
So actually, if we just go to the Arizona game, that's on the road, y'all. I have that as a loss because you know what? During the year, things happen. Down weeks happen. Arizona beat Dallas last year, y'all, early in the year. And it was like, what just happened? That's before Kyler was even back. So I
It's
like
really
what
smart to
Arizona's
project this. It's
yeah,
really smart to project this.
yeah.
It's
Arizona's
probably going to happen.
building. I like what's going on there. I like a lot of their players. I don't think they're better than Chicago. I just think they travel out west. They have a letdown week and Arizona wins.
The argument that you'd be making is we took one off of a Jacksonville team that we're closer to than meets the eye, and eventually you're just gonna have a letdown week
Yep.
because you got a rookie quarterback. Plus, it's the NFL. Plus, you're coming off of a bye week and you're riding high off a win. Winning 2 in a row is tough, and then it sets you up homestand against New England. Nick, how do you feel about that one?
Uh that's just a win. We can move on to week 11.
I'll go so far as to say New England is so bad that if for some reason, and they won't, they choose to sit Drake May long term, I would get it because that team is bad to the point of being dangerous. I don't
Yep.
know how you feel about it, but that feels very 2022 Bears to me.
Yep. Yep. It's not good. So week 11, Green Bay comes to down. Robert, who do you have week 11 winning that game?
My heart wants to pick the Bears so bad here. Of course it does. My head says, as a media personality, I have a small responsibility to pick Green Bay until the moment that the Bears finally win one of these. We've lost 10 straight against Green Bay. Nick, it's tough out there.
Yep.
Like, ask me about the Lions, you'll get a reasonable opinion. Ask me about the Packers, I'll give you reasonable wording. Like, I do think that there's a love bubble that's going to pop next year. I don't think he's going to be awful, but in fact, it wouldn't surprise me, Nick, if he lands at fundamentally the same statistics that he had this last year. But I think you get a much more even performance rather than 10 games of being held back by his team and then 7 games of heater. And instead, you get a much more level across the
Are
board
you
showing.
are you coming to my territory on this,
This is
Robert?
we're
Because
agreeing. I'm matching what
wow.
you have a bad
Wow.
habit of saying the right thing and saying it was so much chest that you convince people you said
Say it
more
with
than
your
you did.
chest.
Does that make sense? Like
Yeah, man.
you and I agree. Like if
Wow.
you and I are both saying that he's probably going to be like a 4,100 yard quarterback over 17 games, then we're totally on the same page. You're just talking about the vibe of how it would feel to watch him, and I'm saying he's not awful, and that means he's a threat. But the
Yeah.
point is, that defensive line is going to be a bad matchup for the Bears until the moment that they have less fangs, and they've got a lot of fangs. Now, if the corners don't come to play and they're a major vulnerability, maybe the Bears win it off receiving talent. It's possible they win this game, but it's Packers. They're the toughest matchup in the division. The division might be the best division in the NFC. It's just one of the toughest games on the schedule.
Yeah.
I got them losing. What
I
about you?
You know what's interesting is, and I've talked about this. So, like, talk about that Dallas game, right? So, going back to, I think so many people put in a ton of eggs into how Green Bay finished the year last year. So, again, let's remember, right? They beat Chicago by more than what the score really was. And Love had a great game. They didn't have Jalen Johnson that game. They didn't have Darnell Mooney that game, right? They
They didn't have
lost
Darnell
to
Mooney
Dallas.
mentally for weeks,
No,
but
no. Um, DeVito and the Giants beat Green Bay during that stretch. They beat Carolina by 3. They beat Minnesota, who was nothing. I'm trying to think. They beat Kansas City like week 10. I mean, I'm not saying they had all bad games, but like it wasn't as crazy of a run as people think. And I actually think, Robert, if you look at it, and this might seem homerism, I'm not sure that we come to week 11 next year and Green Bay is a more talented team than Chicago. I'm just not sure. Like you look at, I like a lot of those receivers. They just don't have high ceilings.
no,
Like,
I,
like
I agree.
we have 3 better than all of them. I'm not sure any of their tight ends are better than Cole Kmet. Like, and if Caleb makes himself close to Love territory, then with all those weapons, it's just a lot better. I think our O line might be better than their O line. Like you just go through the list, and our DBs probably better. Their D line's better. Okay, linebackers we probably have an edge. Like you can go through the list, but I say that to say I'm picking Green Bay this game. because you know how I am, Robert.
Hmm.
Go back here. Green Bay's coming off a bye week.
Yep.
They have extra rest. They'll be healthier. They'll have more time to prepare. And statistically, y'all, if you have 3 or more days of rest, you have a 58% chance of winning that game straight up. So
Nick,
I think this one favors Green Bay just by that alone.
Nick, if you've been a coach, you are a coach. Do you believe in the mental effect of they've got our number?
100%.
The Packers undoubtedly have the Bears number.
Mhm.
Now, the good news is there's a team we'll talk about here shortly. The Bears have the Lions number
Mhm.
pretty definitively. Like,
Yeah.
as good as Green Bay has been, as nonsensically good, because that's the funny part, right, Nick? The Packers have like 5 games a year, every year, regardless of who's been on the roster. Aaron Rodgers had these too. 5 total goose egg letdowns per year, right? It wasn't long ago that just after smoking the Bears in week 1, the Packers nearly lost to a Saints team led by Derek Carr. And it was only when Carr got hurt that the game really
Yes.
turned around for them. I mean,
It was like a field goal too, right? It was
but the
close.
but the Bears don't get the Packers. They get the
Mhm.
Super Packers.
Yep.
Like the Bears get the best form of what the Packers have to offer, and worse, the Bears hesitate as they play that
You,
Super
you know what?
Packers team.
You know what it reminds me of, Robert? And again,
Tell me.
I'm not a soccer guy, but I've been told this. It's like the USA team playing the Europe teams where they're hesitant and they overthink everything and they just lose.
Hesitation is defeat.
Yep.
And
So what's interesting here, Robert, is
mhm.
looking at your predictions. You had a 5-game winning streak for Chicago and then losing at Green Bay.
Oh my gosh,
So
what a heater that would be.
yeah,
But
man.
the NFL would eat that up. Including the bye week, you get a month and a half of just programming. Caleb is a god in the making. That's where
Yeah.
you get what you got to think that Carolina, if he hadn't done it yet, would be Caleb's first multi-touchdown game, which I don't think has happened since Fields' game against Pittsburgh, and it never happened for Trubisky during his rookie year. Like we're talking records are popping
Yeah,
right
yeah, yeah.
around now if Caleb is healthy during that time. And I know Bears fan, you might be hearing that if you're not caught up on this, saying records are popping. What kind of homer juice is this guy drinking right now? I'm talking about Bears records. We're
Yes.
talking about 11 passing touchdowns. We're talking about 2,300 passing yards.
The
But
bar is
like
low.
like you're saying though, Nick, it's to me, they beat Jacksonville. And outside of when I look at Carolina, Jacksonville, Washington, Arizona, New England, I'm looking at Jacksonville and 4 of the worst 6 teams in football.
Yes.
Now, that's not me trying to kill Arizona, and I think you get it. It's
Yep.
more to say the schedule gods, looking at you, Roger, just happened to package this middle stretch that's particularly easy.
Mhm.
And we're so stoked for that.
Yep.
But
And a bye week in there too.
and a bye week
Make
in
make sure
there.
you're rested up for that stretch run of Washington, Arizona, New England. Okay,
So
so
they welcome Minnesota.
yeah, week 12. Is it
Gotta
near
be
you?
JJ, right?
Yeah,
Like
okay, is it you?
we've
Okay.
got to be talking about JJ McCarthy at this point
Yeah,
of the season, or do
yeah.
you believe that they intend to ride Darnold out the whole way?
No, no, it's gotta be JJ at this point. Now, the interesting point here is, again, I have more doubts than a lot of other people do, is TJ Hawkinson back at this point? Now, people they'll be like, "Well, yeah, he'll be back." Towards ACL the day before Christmas, had surgery, I think, in January, but he also tore his MCL, y'all, okay? Do we have to look at Tariq Cohen, who just got signed, and I'm grateful. I hope that he sticks and has a job in the NFL. Towards ACL, I'm like, oh, he'll be fine. Didn't come back okay. Bakhtiari, still dealing with that. Like, it's not always a simple thing of, hey, they'll come back. And when you get multiple ligament tears, that's when it gets more complicated. Maybe he's back, but he's not the same player either. That's something else to think about for this week 12 game.
I agree. Nick, here's a weird question. Do you watch the hockey playoffs at all?
No, not a hockey guy. I like watching hockey in person. I think it's the most entertaining one to watch in person, but I don't follow it.
In Minnesota doesn't watch, or not Minnesota, in Wisconsin doesn't watch hockey. Tisk tisk. Anyways,
Robert, I'm so about football, man. I can't
well,
dedicate
good
to
for
another
you.
sport.
It's just like once I get out of the draft, I want so badly to just get to training camp. Like the fan in my soul, content creator, we love this stuff. But the fan in my soul is like, nothing's going to happen. And then you get OTA freakouts like the ones we had this week. I bring up the NHL playoffs because one thing that they talk about a lot is how does a goalie respond to a defeat?
Mhm.
Because I think one of the only positions in sports at all that mimics a quarterback in terms of their impact on their game is a hockey goaltender, where if you just pitch a shutout and are a wall, your team will win. And you could steal games that way. And people talk a lot in this playoff season, Nick, about this goalie is X good coming off of a loss.
Ah, okay.
And I can't help thinking. So when the Vikings were rumored briefly on Twitter to be the Bears' week 1 opponent, I was not happy about it. I was like, you're kidding me. Caleb's first taste of NFL action is Brian Flores that's just going to blitz his brains out. I don't love that.
Oh, I
And
do.
neither did
Good luck, Brian Flores. When you got Keenan, you're gonna
but
blitz.
neither did Roger. And they scheduled him for week 12 in the Bears' house. And if they're coming off a loss, dude, you're going to have trouble telling me that Caleb Williams, if he is who we think he is, isn't going to have a little bit in his bag. Because here's the funny part. So long as Caleb doesn't fumble, unfortunately, that's a bit of an if, but
Yep.
so long as Caleb doesn't fumble, he could take 4 sacks if on the 5th play he flicks the ball downfield, DJ Moore runs underneath it, and you take that thing into the end zone. You
Right.
gain so much plus EV off of the touchdown throw where you beat the blitz definitively that it's worth a couple sacks here and there. So I really like where the Bears are at
Mhm.
this week 12 one at their house. What about you?
You know what's interesting is I brought that up on Dave and Ficky's podcast, the BFR. You guys should go follow them over there. They're great guys. We did this whole schedule thing too, and I brought that up because I think Caleb has that dog in him where he takes it personal, and he's like, "Oh yeah," like the Jordan,
Mm-hmm.
where I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember the guy's name, where he's like, "Hey, nice game, Mike," and then they play the next day against that team, and like Jordan put the things in there to get him. So I feel like that's the thing coming off a loss to Green Bay. I think they'll destroy Minnesota at home. So we both have a win there. Now we have at Detroit, and it's Turkey Day. And I I know what you're saying. Detroit struggles against Chicago. I got this as a loss. Detroit, DJ Reader, they added him. They added some corner help. That line is top 3 in the NFL. I think they're a very good team. I don't think that it's not possible, but I think that the Bears won't be favored.
2022 Thanksgiving. Who did the Lions play?
I can't remember.
I can't either. Look this up while I'm talking
Sure.
because I need to know if I'm being anecdotal or if I might actually have something. Because looking through this, Nick, I think the Lions have been particularly bad on these Thanksgiving Day games. Like the Lions, it's a weird one to choose because I traditionally remember the Bears beating the Lions every time we square up with the Lions on Thanksgiving. Like
They
more
they,
than
lo- they lost to Buffalo by 3.
so close game, but they lost. They got rolled by the Packers last year. Thanksgiving was an ugly game against as they welcome Green Bay. Then in 2021, Andy Dalton beat Detroit, and that was where the team gave him the game ball. I have no idea what happened in 2020.
I
In
mean, they
19
were 10-1 playing Chicago in 2021. By the
in
way,
2020, I actually am thinking about it now. That was when Mitch Trubisky beat David Blau, which was a wild game. But
that wasn't Thanksgiving though.
no, it wasn't Thanksgiving.
That was
Okay,
the game after.
well, we you could keep looking back if this intrigues you. But
Yeah, they haven't won Thanksgiving in a while.
the more I'm thinking about it, the more that this Thanksgiving game seems like it's a bit of a snake bite for these Detroit Lions.
Hold on, I'm back in 2018. I'm trying to find a win on Thanksgiving. I'm still looking.
Which is not to say that they can't beat the Bears. It is to say that if they didn't, at this point, Nick, I wouldn't be shocked because they haven't done
There,
this in a while.
there we go.
And
Got one. Got one. 2016, they beat Minnesota 16-13.
you just go all the way back to 16 to find a
Uh-huh.
Lions win on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Okay, the other part about the Lions that I do think is worth talking about, Nick, this is the thinnest team that nobody is acknowledging is thin. I keep hearing people, tell me that Detroit's receiving core is well put together. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, everybody brings up Jamison Williams. I loved Jamison Williams out of school. Put your Pryor back on the shelf. Jamison
Mm.
Williams has shown us nothing at the NFL level, especially coming off of an injury. If Amon-Ra St. Brown misses any time at all, but especially if he misses a game like this, that team takes a huge gut punch, like a massive blow
I
to its
mean I
offensive
mean,
potential.
Sam Laporta, one of the best young tight ends in the NFL.
Okay,
Gibbs
one
is a good
weapon.
receiver too.
That's one weapon. And it's a weapon in particular that Tyreek Stevenson stuck on multiple key downs during their second square up.
Well,
Uh,
Jameer Gibbs, David Montgomery.
okay, there's some running backs. Like, I'm not trying to turn into Captain Hater. I promise, Nick. It's more like
Yeah,
if this was the Bears, like let's switch jerseys,
yeah.
right? We would be saying our offense is a little we like them. We like these players. We like what they've done for us, but
Mhm.
I just don't know that they're that good. Whereas we'd be talking about how talented Chicago's receiving core is, and we'd talk about history, not just with top 10 pick receivers,
Yeah.
but also DJ Moore just put up 1,400 yards, and Keenan Allen has been a face of the league as far as receivers have gone for 10 years at this point. Like,
The
I'm
the
really
other
trying to
thing,
be frank here. There's
yeah.
this part of me, Nick, that's like, if the Lions offensive line looks anything close to what they looked like against Chicago in the two meetups that the Bears had last year, I don't think that there's much doubt when it comes to these games. But who knows? Maybe I'm too high on them. It's
Hmm.
possible.
Also, you got your DeAndre Swift revenge game, Robert, if you want to go there.
Oh shoot, maybe he'll catch the pass in the end zone. By the way, looking back, like, gosh, was that 2019? It was, wasn't it? No, it was 20. It was 2020,
Oh, he
right?
dropped a touchdown? Yep.
Nick, that was one of the closest dodge bullets I've ever felt. Like, I could almost feel that one whiz by my head,
Yeah.
and it was totally a sign of what was to come. Like, it was totally a
So
clear.
so who are you taking on Thanksgiving?
I'm drinking the Homer juice. I really like the Bears here.
Okay.
It's hard for me to not like. For some reason, I think that the Bears beat them in Motown, and the Bears dropped the one at Soldier. I don't know why
Okay.
that's in my gut, but I think it's because short week to me favors the talented team. I also think another thing we haven't talked about, Nick, the Bears don't have any pressure on them. We can act like Chicago's putting pressure on them. The rest of the world is not. They have a rookie quarterback, and that is a free excuse card for
Well,
anybody that wants to play
people
him.
hate Chicago for being honest.
Sure, but also Chicago's done a lot to not give them much to
No, I
cheer
get it.
for. What I'm getting at is Detroit right now, people are going to act like they are a dynasty in the making. If Detroit starts dropping games, people are going to freak out the same way they freaked out about
Oh, yeah.
Buffalo. And now Jared Goff just got an extension, dude. And Amon-Ra
All
St.
of them
Brown
did,
just got an
man.
extension. And
All of them did.
Penei Sewell just got an extension.
Mhm.
If the Lions come into this game with a worse record than the Bears, which is the NFL, that could easily happen, especially because the Lions are playing a first place schedule, aren't they?
Yep.
Like, if this happens, this Thanksgiving game could be like an all the marbles type game for Detroit, but extra credit for where Chicago is in
Yeah.
terms of their development timeline. And if you're telling me, Nick, just knowing the psychology of it, that Jared Goff is going to hold up well in that kind of environment, or that Caleb Williams isn't the kind of quarterback to smell blood in the water, I think you're out of your
I
mind.
am.
But who knows?
So
Maybe I'm just spinning a narrative.
so I want you to just to keep rolling. Okay, so we disagree there. Chicago then travels to the West Coast, San Francisco, 325 game. Where are you at on that one?
Chicago's got plenty of rest advantage coming off of Thanksgiving, and they're still going to get popped by San Fran. I can't, in good conscience, pick them beating Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan's 49ers until we roll up to the game and see that they're the better team for one reason or another. How are you feeling about this one?
Robert, I'm picking Chicago
Get
to win
him!
this game,
Get
okay?
him!
They got not only do they have the rest advantage of Chicago playing on Thanksgiving, right? San Francisco plays against Dallas on Sunday Night Football the week before. There's an extra little rest advantage in that game. Okay. And at this point in the season, Robert, I know that we talk about, anything can happen, but you look at the 49ers, right? They could be an injury or two away. Debo, you never know what could happen. And that's why I kind of like playing the harder teams later because it just takes one Jared Goff injury, one Jordan Love injury, one, Brandon Ayuk injury, whatever, to change what this dynamic of this game would look like. Because if the Bears lose Keenan Allen, you still got two wide receiver ones,
We
So,
could do that for a lot of this, right?
right,
If the Bears
right.
lose Jalen Johnson, it's not like the Tyreek Stevenson DB core looked bad. The receivers for Green Bay just looked very good in
Mhm.
that final game that they had. If pretty much, I would say Montez Sweat and dude, I'm gonna go even
Well,
further.
Caleb.
Well, you say Caleb, but I like Tyson a lot more than I like a lot of backup quarterbacks, especially given the receiving core that the
Oh,
Bears would have
okay.
around him. I ain't
That's fair.
trying to. This is not me saying that Caleb is somehow unvaluable. Not at all. It's more to say that a team like the Rams cannot lose Matthew Stafford. You need the guy who's going to fit the ball into
Mhm.
a tiny little window. Whereas with Tyson, the moment you bring Tyson in there, in my opinion, you're going to just throw to Keenan like 12 more times a game to
Yeah.
slowly
Yeah.
matriculate your way
Oh,
down
I
the
can
field.
see that. He's like, this guy gets open. I'm just gonna throw. So,
But you could do
okay.
it. And another thing, hey, Nick, I got to support you on this. Most teams have horrible records against West Coast teams in either September or in the noon slot, but they're not playing in the noon slot. They're
Mhm.
playing in the midday slot at
Yep.
3:25. So you could argue that their bodies should be plenty awake to go or like and ready to roll at Levi's Stadium. I can't in
And
good conscience pick a win here.
and
But
Chicago plays well against San Francisco, man. So I'm gonna keep rolling. Okay, week 15 at
skull,
Minnesota,
skull,
Monday Night
skull.
Football, the house that Kevin Warren built.
Sunday night
Right?
football, right?
I have Monday Night Football.
You have it written in the show sheet as SNF.
Oh, I do. I think it's Monday Night Football though.
I
Am I
can
wrong?
rock with either.
Am I wrong? Okay, let me look this up. It is Monday Night Football. My fault.
Monday night football. We got
Let
the
me switch one
ESPN
letter.
crew.
Editing, boys. It happens. Okay. Monday Night Football at Minnesota. I think they probably have, let's say this is a month later, TJ Hawkinson's back, etc. I'm going to have this as a letdown game. Chicago just
Mhm.
upset San Francisco on the road. And this is 3 in a row at Detroit, at San Francisco, at Minnesota. I think this is a letdown game. And they're like, oh, man, what is going on in Chicago? And they lose.
How many wins am I up to at this point?
All right, let's look. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wins for Robert right now.
And I say that because first of all, I do think that the Bears season is front loaded. This is really not out of the question. They easily could have less wins. It's totally possible. Blah blah blah. Normal Robert trying to be a realist like sentence just inserted here, right, Nick? But also, I think according to the way that I'm picking the schedule, this and next week both make sense. As this week being a look ahead game, right? The
Yep.
classic game where the Bears get caught looking ahead at Detroit. And
Mhm.
then it also wouldn't surprise me if they kind of hit their emotional apex after the one I have is Detroit, but in your case it works too, where they beat San Fran and now at 9 wins, they are 1 win out of a playoff spot,
Yep.
right? Like at this point, they're probably in the division hunt based on
Yes.
the way that you and I have this. And so who knows? Maybe Caleb is just that dog. And the rest of the
Mhm.
team, they rise to the occasion because they see their divisional games and they have to. But it would make so much sense for them to basically have overperformed according to the record because it's not like I think they're this amazing. It's more like the schedule to me is very soft, and I
Mhm.
love that. We're
Mhm.
I'm all about wins no matter how they come. But if you're asking me on paper, I will favor the Bears against Minnesota every time.
Okay.
In practice, I think Brian Flores will steal one from you, and it makes a lot of sense that it'd be here.
Okay. So you're going loss or win?
I'll pick the loss just so
Okay.
that it'll fluff my win-loss record. But
Now
anybody
now
listening to
here
the podcast, I need you to know that
now
this is
here's something interesting, Robert, okay?
hmm
You have the Bears on a 3-game losing streak right now.
after a
Losing
5-game winning streak. But
No, no,
yes,
no, 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 no. No, the 5-game winning streak, losing to Green Bay, beating Minnesota at home, beating at Detroit Thanksgiving. loss at San Fran, loss at Minnesota, loss home against Detroit. You already said that was going to be a loss.
Yeah, I do
I
think
wrote
that
it down.
makes sense. I'm
Okay.
probably going to pick it that way.
So
Oh
I have
boy.
I have home against Detroit as a win. Okay. Again, Caleb's a dog. He's mad. They just lost to Minnesota. Okay. He bounces back. Okay. I'm going to give you, or no, I'll start this one. Okay. Now, this one's interesting. I'm going to bring some stats into this one. Home against Seattle. This is the third game in 10 days. People have talked about this. This is not fun. FYI, 3 games in 10 days hasn't happened to a team in 5 years. It's going to happen 10 times in 2024 since 1990. In the third game, right, of that 3-game stretch in 10 days the teams have had. Teams have only won that third game 38.5% of the time,
Yikes.
despite being 1.6 point favorites. Now, Seattle is going to come off a short rest as well to Chicago, and teams doing that on a shortened week only win 43% of the time. So I don't know, maybe it evens out. I'm picking Chicago still Thursday night football against Seattle. This is Shane Waldron revenge game, y'all, and I think we're the better team.
Well, I want the Bears to win 10 games in this schedule. So it falls to me to either go back on my word and change Minnesota to a win or to pick them to beat Seattle. And I'm going to pick them to beat Seattle because,
Okay.
like you're saying, I mean, look, Nick, there are parts of this. So this time last year, not quite this time. It was a little later in the year, but you get it. We walked through the schedule. We laid out how very reasonably we thought that the Bears last year were a 9-8 team that hinged on Justin Fields being a certain person that
Yep.
or a player that are we allowed to say he just didn't quite live up to what we had for him?
Yeah.
I,
Well,
I
and
hope
the
so.
thumb injury too. I'll give him
Plenty happened. We get it. But anyways, to me, Thursday night football, this is a game Caleb's got to win for you. And it's really the only one on the schedule that I think Caleb has to win for them. But in the situation they're in, where you don't want to go into the playoffs having lost, let's say, 4 out of 5 of your games, God forbid you go into the playoffs having lost all the last 4 of your games, that if the Bears want to make the playoffs, they got to win that 10th game. This is a good spot to do it. Short rest means it's just a test of mettle and who wants it more. And
Mhm.
I bet you Shane Waldron wants it pretty bad
Yeah.
against Seattle,
Yeah.
don't you think?
So I'm going to let you roll into week 18
Boy,
at Green Bay. Finish out the schedule, Robert. Where are you going?
I have a hot take. Okay, Nick.
Okay.
So let's say that the Bears beat Seattle. They're 10-6, right? Where do you think they are in the division standing?
Here, hold on real quick. I want to see where I have them, just to be fair here, okay? I have, let's see. I have them at 10 wins too. How
I
about
know,
that?
I know. You and I have
Okay.
flipped games, but we're both feeling pretty much
Yeah,
the
10
same
wins.
way.
Okay.
So
If they
at
have
10-6,
10
where are
wins,
they in the division?
I think that they are either tied for first or first.
The question that I don't know the answer to is if they're second, let's say the Packers or maybe the Lions have 11 or 12 wins.
Mhm.
Is there a situation where Caleb's big comeuppance in Lambeau gets robbed from us and the Bears just rest everybody?
I don't think you can do it against Green Bay.
You just can't?
I think
Uh,
not when you've lost the last 11, Robert.
Not to mention, Nick, just throwing it at you, I am the person who, okay, so I don't know what you were thinking in 2018, but if you take a walk all the way back to some of the earliest Bear With Us episodes that
Oh
I
man.
ever did, you will unearth a podcast where I begged the Bears to throw the game against the Vikings at the end of the 2018 season because I said, why would you not want to play this Vikings team in the playoffs? You have the ability to choose your opponent and you
Yeah.
want to choose the Eagles? Choose the Vikings.
Well,
Blow this game and smoke them. Instead, they smoked the Vikings. They got the Eagles. We know how that ended. The point being that, to your point, these teams try in these scenarios. You could pull all the players you want, and these teams will still
hey,
try.
you play to win the game.
Get him, Nick. It's a bugaboo. I can't pick a win until the moment that they show me they can. And
All
a
right.
10-7 finish makes an awful lot of sense. but please do my heart a service. Are you going to pick the Packers or are you going to pick the Bears?
So I honestly I think that there are 2 Bears rookies that are gonna play a big role in this one. I see Torrey Taylor having some magnificent punts, changing field position, pinning Green Bay back, and it coming down to a close game. And this is just what I envision, Robert. Okay. The Bears are down. Caleb buys a little time, throws it up, and Roma Odunze mosses Jair Alexander
Need
for the
it.
win in Lambeau. And that's the point when Ryan Poles is like, we're taking the North and not giving it back.
Need it.
End of season, 11-6, baby. Let's go.
It's so funny because if you don't mind me segueing immediately to the other note that you have written down here, when we're talking about 11-6 and 10-7 predictions, it probably sounds like we're smoking crack. I mean, that we're looking at a rookie quarterback and we're saying, "Oh yeah, they're going to win more than they won last year." But the big thing here for me is I don't need to read that the Bears have the third easiest strength of schedule to note that their schedule is outrageously favorable. I mean,
Mhm.
Nick, even if they're off our projections, let's say they beat Tennessee, they lose to Houston, they lose to the Colts, they also lose to the Rams. Oh, no. But then if they win their next five, which I really don't think is out of the question, God forbid they split with the Packers, right? God forbid they take both games off Minnesota. I mean, there are a lot of paths here. You and I actually bothered to pick games where they just let the team, like they let themselves down
I,
and they
I,
lose.
I have 11 wins and they lost to Arizona and Minnesota.
Right, exactly, right? Where it's maybe we're looking past Tennessee. It's not like that's impossible,
Mhm.
but just because they lose to Tennessee in somebody's prediction doesn't mean that they couldn't walk into Houston and take the top off of a Houston team that overlooks a rookie quarterback. The Bears are going to get overlooked too. Like they've got sweet receivers, but there are going to be plenty that are going to say, "Oh well, rookie quarterbacks in X situation have only won Y games." I really struggle, Nick, not to look at this Bears team and think this Bears team is flat better than last year's Bears team. This year's Bears team has the same weakness that last year's Bears team did, which is a really bad defensive line. Sorry, I meant a really developmental defensive
Oh,
line.
there we go. There we go. Well,
But
so the all
they
the strength of
navigated it
schedule,
last year.
y'all. What's up?
They navigated the D line thing last year too.
Mhm. The strength of schedule isn't based off of teams' records from last year. I know that's something that bothers people. Like, well, the teams aren't going to be the same as they were last year. This is based off of Vegas's win-loss totals for this upcoming season, and we know Vegas in the end wins money because they're smart. So they have the third easiest based off of that. The rest of the division, Green Bay is 19th, Detroit is 21st, Minnesota is 29th. So
Rough
Chicago
life
is
for Minnesota.
well, playing the division, you have some pretty tough teams in division where it hurts. In terms of rest, Chicago, I think I counted it. They have the eighth most rest. They're +5. When I look at the individual games, the the hardest one is they face Green Bay coming off of a bye. Outside of that, they only have one other game that's -1. The rest of them, they're favored. They have 3 different games where they have 3 or more days of rest, which again, as I said, is a 58% advantage winning games. Um, so there's a lot of things I think that are advantages here. That's not homerism. It's just this is set up where they have extra rest or they're set up early in the season. Like I said, Robert, if you come out of the first 10 games, which again, as I said, is the easiest schedule in the NFL based off of those Vegas win totals, and then let's say an injury happens within the division, Green Bay, Detroit, Minnesota, San Francisco has some injury, whatever, and those games all of a sudden aren't so difficult, and they're a little bit easier, then all of a sudden, hey, there are more wins that just magically happen there. Now, again,
And
injuries could happen in Chicago too, but I think things are going to happen in the NFL where the last part of the schedule isn't going to look as bad as it did initially.
this is not a fair way to say this because it's pretty normal for one team to have a bunch of injuries and then another team has like I don't know a normal amount of injuries. Like Chicago could have 8 injuries on their injury report, whereas another
Mhm.
team has 4. That happens all the time. But in the world of talking right now in May about injuries, Nick, I keep doing this thing where if you take X injury and you apply it to both teams, I like Chicago's situation more, right? Like, for instance, which quarterback do you think is better in their respective team? Tyson Bagent or Sean Clifford?
Yeah, Tyson Bagent.
Which receiver do you think is better, Keenan Allen or Jamo Williams?
Oh my gosh. Easily Keenan.
Which receiver do you think is better, Keenan Allen or Jordan Addison?
Keenan Allen.
You could do this. I don't want to say like across the roster, but oh
Mhm.
no, the Bears lose their starting left tackle and their starting center. Now you have Shelton Coleman, a starter like for the Rams, that's playing center. And what are you flipping?
Coleman Shelton.
Shelton, thank you. Uh, now
I
you
was
have
like, who's Shelton Coleman, man?
now you have a former starting center for the
Yep.
Rams that's playing center for you, and you've got, I can never remember the guy's name, but you've got a former swing tackle that's starting for you at left tackle.
Oh, not Karan Namagaji?
I mean, if you want to do Quran, you could do Quran. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm glad that there would be theoretically like a battle for that spot.
Mhm.
And then you apply those same injuries, say, to Detroit, and I would argue that the picture's a little more grim
Yeah.
because losing Ragnow is a big deal, and losing Taylor Decker is a big deal. Whereas the Bears are trying to build an offensive line that's better than the sum of their parts, and they just so happen to have a couple of spare parts that are about as good as the current solution sitting right behind them. Am I crazy for seeing a kind of deep team at some of the key positions? Montez
And
Sweat would be a major domino. That
yep,
one,
that's
not you, Montez.
yeah.
I,
No,
I
I
want
agree with
you
you.
in I want you in the, what is it, the Dragon Ball Z recovery chamber after every single game. Like, you need to be healthy.
Yeah.
But
Well
everybody else,
well, you haven't even talked about Tyler Scott. Is
I
a
know.
developmental 4th round receiver that we like that's behind 3 awesome ones like Velus Jones. Again, I know there are good and bad parts of Velus Jones. He's your wide receiver 5 now. That's one of the better wide receiver 5s around, honestly.
There's one position group on the team that you and I haven't talked about yet, but it's a very similar problem to last year. Are you on the same page as me with safety?
I mean, I think it's better though.
Well, the starters are better, at least
Backup.
from where we were with Eddie. Who's the safety? Oh no, you're right. They've got
Jonathan
Jonathan
Owens, man.
Owens. Jonathan Owens is not that bad
No.
in the wide world of safety play, and so I don't know, man. I struggle when it comes to the injuries thing. At least when we're looking at win loss, because if you take both starting edges off between us and the Patriots, that's not a good look for either team. The
No.
Patriots have more other guys on their defensive line, but even that, and that's before you take the receivers away.
So here's my question. 2 years ago, middle of the year, Ryan Poles makes a trade and brings in Chase Claypool. And N'Keal Harry, right? 2 years ago as well?
No, that was before the season, but yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, before the
I
season, but
guess
still
it's all
made
the
a trade.
same in terms of the way that you and I are approaching what you're about to ask me.
Yeah. And then last year, we got a center. Didn't work
Sure,
out.
we did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, whatever.
I've
He's
been
been snapped.
told we got a center.
Yeah, whatever. There was a trade made. But then Montez Sweat. In my mind, Robert, we talked about the schedule, right? It favors Chicago early on. That's hands down. Everyone knows the easiest schedule. They should do well. If they're rolling and we still need a defensive line help, I could see Chicago flipping maybe the extra second that they have. Maybe they're imagining a third coming from Ian Cunningham, etc., and getting another pass rusher or maybe interior D lineman, whatever, someone on that D line to give them the boost for this stretch run. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I can too. The only thing I'm thinking is it probably is going to be Ryan. It's probably going to be a player that Ryan Poles doesn't think he needs to pay a premium for. Montez Sweat's a great example. I mean, if you put, it's not long ago you had to pay a first round pick to go get Bradley Chubb. And the Bears got, I would argue, a better player in Montez Sweat for a second rounder because they let deals like the Bradley Chubb deal, and just saying, the Khalil Mack deal for Chicago. That's not me hating on Mack. Mack was a good soldier. He was a great Chicago Bear. He was hurt a lot. And
Yes.
to say that he was worth a first and a second and $25 million in 2019 is a bold statement, if
Mhm.
you ask me. It's
Mhm.
again, loved Khalil Mack, awesome Chicago Bear, slot to pay for any player. especially when it's an edge rusher. Nick, I've got my eye on. I want to know what's going to happen with Jonathan Allen, because when you start to talk through the things that would make somebody like make Ryan Poles' eyes widen about what he might look for in a player, they square a lot with what's going on in Washington, where you got a player that's already on the outs. You've got a position for him somewhat open in Chicago. I don't know what this would mean for Dexter. I'm not trying to push Dexter out, but at that point you might have a good problem to have if you could. Because here's the thing, Nick. Let's say you could get him for the 2020 or for a 2025 third, and if you really got pushed, you could also pay a 2026 third so that they could hold the cap and make the money work. If you didn't
Mm.
have to give up the second, are you intrigued?
Yes, I am. Good. Jonathan Allen's a good player. And again, this is a team, y'all. I mean, even Vegas has them at 8.5 wins over under. That you look at any power rankings, Robert. Chicago is like 13th to 15th.
Right.
This isn't the old Bears, y'all. This is all of the people are seeing this huge improvement. So adding a player of that caliber to this team, even a veteran to those young 2D tackles, makes sense.
I think they need a little insulation on the D line. I think everybody knows it.
Mm.
But D line moves are pretty common. I mean, Leonard Williams got traded for not too long ago. And in this case, Nick, you'd be trying to take advantage of the, what do you call it? The discount you get for trading for a player that's a little on the older side. And I really mean that, because
Oh,
when you look at Leonard Williams, when you look at all kinds of the moves that you see that are particularly expensive, shocker, it's for younger players, right?
you're talking D line, an older guy. You're music to my ears, Robert. You know who I want.
I know who you want. And I just can't help but think that the big question for the Bears is, how would they fit this under the cap? And with
Mhm.
Jonathan Allen, maybe you can get Washington to hold the salary. Maybe you have to pay a little more. That's where the extra third comes in.
You
Because I don't know that Allen is worth, given the current contract. Here's my thing, Nick. Given his current contract with a base salary of, I think it's $14, $15 million, he is way closer to the Amari Cooper trade than anybody is saying. Like, everybody assumed that the Cowboys were going to cut Amari Cooper. Doesn't get cut, gets traded for a pittance. And I think Cleveland's been okay with that. So the question becomes, would Washington hold your salary if you upped the price from a 5th-round pick to, say, a 3rd-round pick and change? Maybe. I don't know that they would. But
Mm.
that's a move that at least pops to me because, look, Nick, somebody's going to talk about how, I don't know, name somebody. Like, name a stud. It's not
Well,
Daniil Hunter.
I'm looking at his salary. So like let's just look at, and again, I this is tough to figure out what else there is, but so he's got 12 million of dead cap on his deal, and his salary is looks like 21 million. So Chicago took him on, it would be roughly 9 million next year. Now again, depends on when you get him, right? But then the next year would be let's see, that's probably not exactly how it works. 6 million off of their probably 17 million for 2025, which isn't too bad. So you have him for 2 years. I would say somewhat reasonable. I think how they make the cap work, Robert, is that's when you start taking money off of deals like Tremaine Edmonds, Montez Sweat, Jalen Johnson, push money in the future. Because honestly, this is if you're winning in middle of the year, you realize, hey, we need to add a Jonathan Allen, you're in the playoff hunt. And this is your window with your rookie quarterback. This is what you do.
The guys you're probably talking about, just as we talk through this, are either somebody like Jonathan Allen, who's he already requested. Am I crazy? He requested a trade, didn't he, Nick? Like at
I,
the
I, heard, I heard something. Yeah.
in the middle of last year, he said, "I don't want to be here anymore," and
Why
it
would
would.
he be though?
And then they already have Fedarian Mathis, which I know nobody cares, but they have Fedarian Mathis. They have, oh my gosh, it's John Ridgway. They now have Deron Payne being paid a ton of money. And then they spent a basically 1st-round pick to draft Johnny Newton. They are log jammed. They are plainly log jammed at
Mhm.
defensive tackle. This roster is not set to hold him. But even if you wanted to move away from that dude, you're talking about Josh Sweat, who, as I understand it, still has a 2025, like his contract expires at the end of next year. DeMarcus Lawrence for the Cowboys might be a deadline available deal if the Cowboys disappoint in one way or another. I'm just looking through contracts trying to find people that are basically hanging. Charles O'Menahue's deal it expires, but I just would be shocked if they traded him. I doubt the Bears are into Shaq Barrett. What do you think? I mean, just doubt it, right?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one right now to look at.
But that's your edges, because I know if I know Nick Whalen at all, he's much more thinking edge deal than he's
Yes.
thinking D tackle deal. And
Yes.
I'm only talking about D tackle because it feels the most available to me. The
Mhm.
edges across the league seem generally pretty locked up, but who knows? We'll
I
see.
mean, you could fish, man. I mean, if it's going to be something super cheap, you could fish for Khalil Mack on the last year of his deal. You could fish for Joey Bosa.
How bad would the Bengals have to start to trade you Trey Hendrickson?
They'd have to be bad
Mm, should
because
we?
he's going to want a new deal, and I don't think that's what Poles wants to do.
I
You
don't
don't
think
want to
Poles
pay
did.
him top money, and he's already what 30, 31.
He's 30 right now, which
Yeah.
is another part of where I can't help but thinking it's not the same, but Jonathan Allen's 29. So he would come over. You would hope that you'd revitalize what you saw from a while ago. I don't
Well,
know.
and never for 2 years. That's different.
I really hate the thing where I almost start to sound like I'm stuck on one move. It's not specifically Allen. That one
Yeah.
just, it's funky to me, Nick, that if you told me, if you looked into my eyes and you said, Robert, I've seen the future. The Bears want to move Zach Pickens to 3 tech. So then they'll have George Pickens and they'll have Zach Pickens, or they'll have George, not Pickens. They'll have Jervon Dexter with Zach Pickens behind him. They'll have Andrew Billings, and then they'll add a 1 tech from the cut list that can play. I
Mhm.
go, okay, the line's not amazing, but everybody's in the proper place. Now I've got 2 guys with a little bit of juice. In theory, Zach could lose 10 pounds or 10 of the pounds that he gained to play 1 tech, so that he could just be a sprier 3 technique and
Yeah.
we'll just take our L against the run. And then at that point, we're looking for a better edge player, but we can live with what we have on the interior. If they're going to keep playing Zach Pickens at 1 technique, let's go get a baller at 3 tech and have him and Dexter just throw
What
him at
about
the
Andrew
basket.
Billings? Where's he at?
I love him. He's playing 1 tech. What are you talking
Yeah. Okay.
about?
Okay. Well, you just so here's another question for you. Okay. Austin Booker, younger,
Yep.
long, raw. When is a realistic time to expect him to be a regular contributor?
History says never, which is not
Yes.
to be hateful. It's
No.
more to say, just so we're all on the same page, expecting a 5th round edge to ever become a regular contributor
Yep.
is, historically speaking,
But just
rare.
because he's raw. I'm just from that perspective.
Totally. I would think next year. Like when you talk about regular player, sure,
Mhm.
this year they'll throw him in there.
Yeah.
But in terms of results, I would start looking for them outright after he gets a year of strength and conditioning
Mhm.
plus another year of growth, because he in particular is quite young. But what do you
Right.
think?
So it could be next year or the year after, right?
Right.
Here's my point. The Bears have that guy on their team right now. A guy that hasn't produced. Super raw. Been in the league for 2 years already.
There's
Dominique Robinson was a former
there's
wide
no way.
receiver.
There's no way. I was just thinking as you started saying this, I was like, Nick, there's no way you're about to hype up the guy who just got graded according to the site you use to grade as the worst edge in
No,
football.
no, no. Yeah, Yannick was worse than him, bro. But
No
I'm
way.
yes,
Is
he
that
was.
real?
Dude, don't make me look it up right now. So the reason I'm bringing him up is this, okay? I'm not saying he's the answer, but I'm saying if you want someone to rotate in, this would be the realistic time frame, I think, of having him be somebody who can rotate in. And it's like, okay, he finally grew into his body. He grew into, oh, maybe he didn't qualify.
If you go minimum 20% snaps and you sort by worst rating
Is he
in
the worst?
football, Yannick is the 3rd worst. Dom Rob is the worst. But no worries, he was ever so slightly above replacement in coverage, so you got that going
So,
for you.
but again,
Tyree
he's
Wilson, 9th worst. Not
I
great.
know. I know. So, just something to think of because Booker's it's kind of what you're thinking of, this guy. And if it's going to come together, it would be, hey, he can maybe contribute and do something this year or not at all. But I think of 2 years, he needed a lot of seasoning, man. That first week, that first game against, what was it, San Francisco, was like not realistic.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, what he had two pressures, and then everybody watched the tape, and they basically just downloaded what he could do from there. All right.
Right.
So I don't know about you, Nick, but at least for me, when I'm thinking about Booker, I think it's well worth getting excited. I never want to tell a fan not to get excited. Get excited. Go for it. It's more when we start to blend this excitement with expectation, right?
Mhm.
Where I hope Austin Booker's just a full on baller. I hope he is Max Crosby, but again. I hope he's all the things that all kinds of things, or all kinds of people hope that he's going to be. To me, if the Bears add another veteran that we can feel relatively assured about on the defensive line, I think that team gets a lot better. What do you tell me? Oh,
Calais Campbell, man.
oh
I
yeah, yeah.
want Calais
Yeah,
Campbell.
but is
That's my guy.
honest question. Do you really see Calais Campbell as the needle moving extra player? Like the extra move that
Yes.
puts the
Yes.
defense. Hey,
Yes.
if
Okay.
you
Okay.
see it
Hold on.
that way,
Let's just go to what you referenced to dismiss
yeah, I know.
Dominic
No,
Robinson.
I know. I know you're gonna tell me
Calais
that he's top
Campbell,
25.
23rd best edge last year, which was ahead of Bryce Huff, Rashawn Gary, Joey Bosa, Danielle Hunter, Montez Sweat. He was the 23rd best edge last year at age 37.
I worry about a guy that we're using his 37-year-old grades to justify his 38-year-old grades, just because when
You can say about anybody, Robert.
well, kind of. With Trevor Lawrence, we're talking about a guy who's supposed to be going up the bell curve, right? With Campbell, we're talking about somebody who's supposed to fall off the bell curve. Maybe not specifically at 38, because he's already supposed to be off. Like at 30, at 35, you're not supposed to be playing anymore as a defensive end.
Okay,
And so
here. How about this, Robert? Okay. Calais Campbell's entire career. All right. The last time he was outside of the top 27 edge rushers was 2010.
oh man.
Let me go in reverse order. Last year's 23rd. Year before, 15th, 8th, 27th, 3rd, 1st, 4th, 2nd, 11th, 9th, 20th, 8th, 20th, 54th, 22nd. Didn't qualify as a rookie.
Don't get
That
me
dude
too
knows how to play ball, man.
don't get me too excited. Don't get me too excited.
Let's say he's 30th. He drops off. He's 30th best edge.
That
That's
is not that
opposite.
much of a drop off. You'd have to drop to 60th before I'm even going to consider it a drop off. Does that
Okay,
make
now,
sense?
okay, you want to see where DeMarcus Walker was last
That's
year?
the thing. He's still better.
84th. 84th. That's why I want that dude on my team.
Okay, so Nick, there is one point I wanted to make just because I don't love making it, but I assume that anybody who's been loyal enough to make it to this part of the podcast, we should be able to talk about this. Right, Nick? The other part that I think is most interesting to speak about when it comes to the 2024 Bears, and another reason for optimism, is that coming out of 2021, Bears fans were still relatively high on Mitchell Trubisky. We'd not seen him play anywhere else. And yeah, he was a backup in Buffalo, but that's because he was going to rehab his image. Then he was going to hit the market. Then he was going to start. And then he was going to show everybody that the Bears were stupid to pass on him.
This is
We
where
do
you're
this
going.
sometimes, right? And I want to point back to, I want to use PFF basically to make a grander point. If you don't agree with PFF, that's okay. I still respect you and think that you're cool. Justin Fields clocked in with the 25th worst passing grade in football last year. Well, not 25th worst, sorry. 25th best. So that's with 20% of your minimum dropbacks. So I'm trying as best I can to include only starters. He ended up with a passing grade that's still ranked in that bottom 8 quarterbacks as opposed to above average. Now, Justin Fields is obviously a superstar athlete, so we don't want to use just his passing grade. We want to also use his total offensive grade, where he jumps from 24th to 21st, still behind Baker Mayfield, still behind Derek Carr, still behind Russell Wilson, still behind Jake Browning, still behind, obviously, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, and everybody else above the list. Caleb Williams has a bar to clear, and in my opinion, it's Justin Fields' third season. I think that's a fair bar, Nick. that we
Mhm.
want Caleb Williams as a rookie with better talent around him to mimic or improve upon the play that we got at quarterback last year. But the really wild part is that I'm looking at a rookie quarterback that has a very decent chance to do that. And if the Bears not only improved their wide receiver core, not only got better through age at the offensive line, not only improved their defensive backs because their defensive backs mature another year older, but they also improve at quarterback, yeah, that's a lot of reason to be excited about their record getting better,
Mhm.
especially against a soft schedule. It's an ugly conversation, but it is one that I think is worth
Yeah.
talking about. That if the Bears get a better quarterback, inconsistent, I'm sure there's going to be inconsistencies. He's a rookie, but where they're coming from is not unachievable. Is that a
Mhm.
fair thing to say?
Let me ask you this, okay? Let's say Justin Fields the quarterback for Chicago next year and
Mhm.
starts the whole year, but has Keenan and Rome and DJ with this improved O line,
Mhm.
especially at center. How much more do you think he improves from where he was last year?
I would look you in the eyes. I would look you in the eyes, Nick, and I would wonder how Justin Fields and Keenan Allen's games are supposed to mesh.
I know, but still, you have to think more open than Tyler Scott,
I
than
agree.
Mooney.
It's more a timing thing,
I
right?
know, but
Ki-
just answer the question because it's a
I know.
short one.
I know. Uh not that much.
I think he's at least. I mean, so his grade passing y'all is 67.2. I think he at least gets to that 72, 73 tier.
The Tyrod Taylor, Jake Browning, Russell Wilson tier.
I'm just saying it's a bump up, man.
No,
5, 6 is a
I
bump
can
up.
do that. Like I can get there,
That's a
especially
minimum, in my opinion. So
totally.
so all I'm saying is I think like the bar, like this is again, you could say I'm outrageous, whatever, Homer. I think the bar for Caleb is even better than that as a rookie. Like I think and that's like you could say healthy fields, whatever. But Caleb Williams has got it, y'all. Like I think he could be right here where Trevor Lawrence, Derek Carr, Burrow in that 76 to 78 range as a rookie. I can see that pretty easily.
I can too. I don't want to sound like I'm cold on Williams. To be honest, it's more, and I don't ever want to sound like I'm just trying to hate on Justin Fields either.
No, I love
Field,
Justin Fields, man.
Fields is a quirky player at this point in his career, where he's
Mhm.
such an amazing athlete. He can get away with mental errors from the quarterback position that other guys in the league just can't. I
Yep.
mean, you look at Zach Wilson and the failings that he has at quarterback cannot be overwritten by amazing running ability. Like Nick, you and I talked through this when it came to that second Minnesota game. I think is the perfect little metaphor here, where there was a play for Fields to make on almost every passing play. He didn't tend to make them.
Yep.
Instead, he would find a different passing play through ridiculous athleticism that achieved fundamentally the same thing,
Yeah.
which was like, I don't know how sustainable this is, but it's working for now. And then the offense went in the tank. But I can't help looking at Caleb, just begging the question here, Nick, and saying, Caleb's going to tote the pill. He's not going to tote it like Justin did, but we're going to see moments. You know, we are where the hole between the center and the right guard opens up like the Red Sea, and Caleb charges forward, breaks down a linebacker, picks up a first down, and points like he's Baker Mayfield. Like,
Mhm.
it's gonna happen. You're
Yeah.
also gonna see that Jeter throw where he leaps into the air, rolling to his left, and just spins the ball down the sidelines. Like,
Mhm.
you're gonna see all the Caleb stuff, and it just wouldn't surprise me if we end up inconsistent, of course, but kind of feeling like there's something more cohesive happening on offense in
Mhm.
Chicago than we got last year. Some of it's going to have to do with weaponry. No doubt about that. I
Yep.
think Caleb is getting surrounded in ways that we all wished Justin could have been from day
Mhm.
one. But also, the damage is done. If Justin was still the quarterback, I'd be saying the damage is done. We did it in 2022.
Mhm.
And instead, you get to start fresh with the opportunity, Nick, not just to win games in 2024, but to build something special
Well,
beyond that.
you're missing one other thing, and this is my last point, and I think we were trying to make this a shorter one, which we
We're in
struggle
a
with,
good place. We're in a good place.
is the coaching on offense, and you could argue on defense because we have a defensive coordinator now, which we didn't have for most of last year. The offensive coaching is better, y'all. Shane Waldron is better than Luke Getsy. You have Thomas Brown there. You have a better wide receivers coach. You have the same O-line coach, which that helps with kind of the continuity they have and only bringing in a few pieces to have a young guys. Like with better coaching and guys, when again, we didn't expect the Bears offensive staff, who they brought in. We're like, man, these guys are good. I
They
didn't
are.
expect them to get them. They came to Chicago because of Caleb. They wanted to be associated with that. They had a plan. And to me, like having better coaching than last year, that already boosts you up, maybe even a win.
We
Better quarterback play. Like you go through the list, getting to 10, 11 wins is honestly, it sounds crazy. I think it's realistic.
I feel like, Nick, there are hiring reactions we almost have to redo podcasts on, because when we originally talked about the Shane Waldron hire, we had to play both hands on, well, if it's for Justin, I feel like this. If it's for Caleb, I feel
Yeah.
like this. Now that we're where we are, I can passionately say, do you know how excited I am, Nick, that they got Thomas Brown, who right now is coming off of one of the worst rookie quarterback seasons in ball. And they got him to attach his name to another rookie quarterback at a spot where if this one goes wrong, I don't know what he does next.
Yeah.
Like if
He's done.
if Caleb Williams flames out and Thomas Brown's name is attached to two number 1 overall picks that both just ended up as disasters, that is a monster career ruiner.
Mm,
He is that confident in his evaluation of
yeah.
Caleb Williams and what he thinks he can bring to the table. Do you know how valuable I think it is for him to be there to say, hey, Shane, I'm just saying, it's not to say you may not know something. We did try that with Bryce,
Yeah.
and we
Well,
actually thought it was going to work. It didn't work at all.
but we
Like,
talked about this. He was one of the hottest offensive mind prospects in terms of being an offensive coordinator 2 years ago. And then now all of a sudden he's just coming to not even be an OC because he's like, the old adage. It's like anyone that has a cup of coffee with Sean McVay gets a head coaching job. That's what Thomas Brown wants. He's like, I just want to be attached to this Caleb Williams situation because I know I'm going to take off. Like when coaches are doing that and making career decisions, good things are going to happen.
that's how I feel. And hopefully, Nick, if we're lucky, the Bears are in a position where we're trying to compare Shane Waldron to Bobby Slowick and saying, well, he didn't get hired immediately, so maybe Shane won't get hired either. We've
Mm.
been down this road with Darnell Mooney telling us that we weren't going to have long with Luke Getsy, and guess what?
Yeah.
He was right. We only had 2 years before he
Yeah.
got fired and
Yep.
ends up in Vegas. So jokes aside, I don't know, man. I'm really excited about the schedule. I'm not worried about the baloney that we get out of OTAs. Look, I get it. I want to be excited too. But maybe you tell me, Nick. I guess I can't help but think if Caleb Williams showed up as a rookie, knowing nothing, and dusted the Bears defense, I would be worried about the Bears defense.
Yes.
If
Yes.
if Caleb Williams threw 5 interceptions in a practice, I would look at you and I would say, it's a practice. Aren't we glad he's throwing the interceptions
Well,
now?
I mean, if people are really worried about this, Robert, I saw some stat because Caleb, achieved some crazy stats in college. It was something like he's one of 20 players with 10,000 or 15,000 plus yards, but he had like 20 or less turnover worthy throws. Like he's the only one to do that. Like he's special. Like just chill out. Dude is again generational, superstar level. Like it's hey, Allen Iverson. We talk about practice.
And hey, he's walking into Hallis Hall and he's already talking about championships. Look,
Yeah.
I think the weirdest part when it comes to sports is when you watch guys like Jordan, when you watch greatness all over, it always looks different and it usually looks eccentric. And so, unsurprisingly, I'm drawn to a Caleb type guy that is definitely weird because the more normal he is, the more I wonder if he's eccentric enough to really achieve something crazy. But I don't know. That's like too close to a tinfoil hat thought. So I get
We
it. But
we can go one podcast without a tinfoil hat, man.
I, I just, I'm excited about this team. I am worried that they will get injury bitten because they did not get hit that hard last year. I mean, it, I think they're deep enough to hold serve, but if they really lose DJ and Keenan, then I'm so thankful that they've got Rome Odunze. It
Mhm.
just sucks that that's going to be their plan for a week. But
Yep.
you deal with what you got.
Yep.
I think ADL edition that is not. I want to finish with this. This is my final thought, and it's a negative one. Sorry, Bears fans. We've got plenty of weeks for positivity. I want to point out that if they re-sign Yannick, that does nothing for me. I look at the D line exactly the same as I do right now if their big plan ends up being Yannick Ngakoue. I don't know how you're feeling. If they sign Calais Campbell, I'll roll my eyes. I'll say Nick got me on this one. Good for them. Uh,
Roll your eyes. You should throw a party down there in Texas.
I I know you're gonna say that.
I that's it. I'm gonna get a cake. If they get him, I'm gonna get a cake and we're gonna
I'm
have it live. I'm
I'm
gonna have a
so
candle blow it
ready.
out.
I'm so ready for Calais Campbell to have 6.5 sacks and to get very excited about it. Like I'm and play well on run defense. What?
No, elite run defender.
I know. That's good. If that's the move, it's something. It helps shore up the defensive line.
I
It's much closer to the Clowney move from last year, right? Like a move that does something, or the Justin Houston move that we saw from Indianapolis. Unique right now just feels like you're signing a body,
no,
and
yeah,
I
bad.
don't like that
I
feeling.
okay. How about this? I'm gonna leave on a better note. Okay, for Bears fans,
Do it.
Robert, close your eyes. Okay, remember that first preseason play when Justin threw it to DJ Moore.
I do.
Okay, remember that? Remember him going in the end zone and you like well how you felt. Okay.
Hmm.
All right, now open your eyes. We got 3 of those dudes at receiver now, man. Not 1, not 2. Talking about like LeBron in the decision. Not 1, not 2. We got 3 of those guys. Okay. Let's go.
I'm stoked, man. And everybody keeps underrating Kmet. I've spent my time as a Kmet hater. Everybody's been in that camp at some point in their life, but that's mostly a joke. But like, dude,
JT O'Sullivan.
Nick, let me just throw this to your neck of the woods, okay? Because I think this is important. Fantasy football talks about a stat called breakout age.
Mhm.
And I think it's funny when you go through and you look at tight ends and you realize that their breakout age is like 26
Yes.
consistently.
Yes.
And Cole's not even 26 yet.
Mhm.
So I started wondering about that. I started catching myself going, Cole is 24. Like he spent 4 years in the league. You'd think he'd be older. I wonder how he's going to play next year. And this last season was far and away the best season I think I've ever seen from Cole Kmet. Yeah,
Mhm.
I know the numbers bear it out, but like, dude, past the numbers, his receiving ability looked much cleaner last year than it did in the years before. So what if he gets better? Like, what if
Well,
Cole becomes go? What?
the last half of 2022 got better too. Remember he had that big touchdown against Detroit where it
Right?
was post and he broke it back.
Okay, yeah, but a trick play. I don't want to say anybody can get
No,
open on
I'm saying, but
those.
he was rising at the end of 2022 and then 2023 it kept going.
Totally. I'm saying so for me, Nick, when I look at Cole, this is me getting big nerd mode. But with Cole, there needs to be a method that generates some separation, right? And it's never going to be the oil in his hips because there isn't any oil in his hips. So it was always going to need to be physicality. And I felt like in the end of 22 and going into 23, we saw him get much better at that Mark Andrews top of route push that generates some separation.
Hmm?
And that is buildable. And especially if you're talking
Yeah.
about a guy like Caleb who can thread that ball over the linebacker under
Yep.
the safety in the seam, it just
Mhm.
has me wondering, are we focusing so much on the receivers that we forget that the Bears have a guy they think is Sam Laporta? Are they right? We'll find out. But
Well,
they think he
Gerald
is.
Everett,
I didn't even need to say his name to
like
make the point.
dude, it's going. Um, if people are still here, rate, review, tell your friends. Honestly, this is this is fun. So the more that you guys support us, the more we can do this. So we appreciate y'all. Yeah, that's all I got, man.
Good stuff, everybody. Well, we should be regular. Like all three of the last 3 weeks, if you've listened to this point, where are we going to record this week? I guess not. It wasn't, hey, let's take 3 weeks off. So we chained them all together. We can be consistent, and we'll hit you guys up next time. Y'all, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Bear down. Thanks so much for bearing with us.